welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Home. Today I'm going to be making some dandelion jelly for the first time. Hopefully it turns out okay. I'm going to be telling you and showing you what I'm doing, and I'll also update you as to whether or not this was successful and we have actual jelly, or if it's more like a runny jelly or a syrup. I have heard dandelion jelly called dandelion honey, and I think that product ends up being more runny, like you'd expect honey, but I'm hoping to get a jelly that you can actually scoop out and has a little bit of jiggle to it. We'll see if it works. I'm kind of making up the recipe as I go, but as I said, I will let you know how it turns out. I do want to say, if you choose to make this jelly and you need to find some dandelions, preferably pick from your own yard or a place you know has not been treated with any herbicides or pesticides, somewhere that's away from animals like dogs or cats that might be doing their business in the area where there's dandelions. Also, if you are out picking dandelions somewhere besides your own property, just make sure you're not picking all of them. Take only a little bit, as you would with all types of foraging. The dandelions all float to the top of the water, so I'm going to try to just push them down. Obviously they're not going to stay, but this will at least help rinse them. I'm going to swirl them around. The water is very, very cold. I don't know that you should use ice cold water, but also don't use hot water. If you wanted to, you could put a few splashes of white vinegar in here, if that makes you feel like it's going to get cleaner, but I think plain water is going to be just fine. I'm going to let these sit for a little bit, stirring occasionally to make sure that everything gets evenly rinsed. I've got all my dandelions rinsed and drained. I picked out any leaves or stems that might have gotten lost in there, and now I'm just going to dump that into my large pot. If you see a towel hanging over my arm, it's because my hair is damp and I don't want to drip all over my clothes. So anyways, to this I'm going to add just enough water to cover the dandelions completely. And I'm also going to be adding in some lemon and orange slices. I did 12 cups of water, and of course the dandelions float, so they're not actually covered, but I can press them down and see that there is more water than dandelions. Now I'm going to add my citrus slices. I'm using dried because that's what I had, but I think you could use fresh and that would be fine as well. I'm not bothering to rehydrate these because they're so thin, they will rehydrate as they're in the water with everything else. So 3 orange, 3 lemon. Oops. They do have some seeds on them, which isn't a problem because we're going to strain this anyways. Now let's turn this to high so that it will boil, and then we're going to let that go for about an hour. This is starting to boil, and as you can see, the flowers are starting to sink a little bit. I'm also making sure to keep those citrus slices submerged so that they fully hydrate. And as you can see, they are already looking a lot more hydrated. They're not as dry and brittle. So once this reaches a boil, we're going to turn it down to a simmer for 1 hour. This is where I'm going to strain the jelly. I'm just using a large mixing bowl and a colander. I was planning to use my jelly bags, but they are pretty small and I don't have a jelly bag stand, and I think that would just be kind of awkward. So I've decided to just strain it through this cloth. It's an old flour sack towel, and I think that will be fine. I got everything into the colander. I did spill a little bit because I tried to go too fast, but I didn't lose very much liquid. It's looking kind of gross. It's a little more brown than I thought. We'll see what happens when we add the sugar and boil it again. But I'm just going to let this sit for a while, basically until it just stops dripping. I have somewhere to go this morning, so probably by the time I get back, it will be finished, and then we can move on to the next step. It's been a few hours. This is looking pretty well drained. It's not dripping anymore. So you don't want to squeeze the strained stuff to try to get out more water, because doing so can result in a cloudy final jelly. And I don't really want mine to be cloudy this time, because I want it to be nice looking in case I give any away. Usually I do squeeze the bag because I don't care if it's cloudy, if it's just for myself, but I'm not going to do that this time. I will take these and give them to the chickens later. I think they would enjoy that. I can see that there's some sediment on the bottom. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but I can see a little bit, so I'm going to try pouring it through my jelly bag, see if that helps. Yeah, that helps. So I can see that there's some residue in here, which means it's not in my jelly liquid, I guess. So now I'm going to add my sugar. I'm just using white granulated sugar. That's what I use for all my jams and jellies. I have not tried it with any other type of sugar or sweetener, so I can't say how it would turn out, but of course you're welcome to experiment. So now that this has been added, I'm going to just give it a quick mix and turn the stove up to boil. I'm going to be using my candy thermometer because I feel like it's just a little bit more accurate than going just by how the mixture looks as it's cooking. So I'm going to use the candy thermometer in there, and once it gets to about 222 degrees, 225 Fahrenheit, then it should be set. Of course, I'm also going to just keep an eye on the volume of liquid and see when it has reduced by about half. So that should also help me figure out that it's going to be set, but I'm going to use the candy thermometer anyways, just as a final step to confirm. I've been making jelly for a few years using a no pectin method, so I kind of know how it's supposed to feel while I'm stirring it, if it's going to set or not, but that's not always accurate. So sometimes I end up with jelly that's a little bit more like syrup, and I really want it to be like jelly this time, so I will use the candy thermometer. Here's what it is looking like. Hopefully you can hear me over the boiling, but we're starting to get a nice hard rolling boil. Throughout this process, I might see some foam appearing on the surface, and that's definitely something that could be skimmed off. I've never done it, and I don't think it affects my jelly at all, so I'll probably just leave it on, unless it gets really bad. So it's looking like it's boiling. I'm going to turn this down to about a medium heat and let that just do its thing until it reduces. I did look up a few different tutorials for how to make dandelion jelly, and the amount of time it takes for the mixture to reduce varies from each tutorial. So one tutorial said 30 minutes, another said at least an hour. I'm going to start with 30 minutes and see how it's looking. I think the amount of time it takes for it to reduce in volume is going to depend on a few things. The type of stove you have, I think, and the way it's heated, as well as what kind of pot you're using. So I'm using a pretty heavy enamel cast iron pan pot, And I think if I was using something with maybe thinner walls and a thinner bottom, that might allow it to reduce faster. I'm just speculating, I don't know, but I'm going to check after half an hour and see how it's looking. But I'm expecting it to take at least an hour. We are about 40 minutes into simmering, and that brownish line is where the liquid was when we started, and you can see where it is now. So it is definitely reducing, but it is of course going to take more than half an hour. I haven't checked the temperature yet, so let me try to put this in and see what it says. Maybe I'll put it on this side, just so I can see the numbers a bit better. I don't think I'll film the temperature rising because it's kind of hard to see. I need to get to a certain angle, so I will, oh wait, I think we can see it, that blue line. And now it's steamy again. I'm going to turn the camera off and I will check in once this has reached temperature, and I'll let you know where we're at. The temperature is around, I think 215, so not quite. The temperature is reading 225, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off the stove and get it canned up. Whenever I'm moving jars that are filled, I always, of course, use my jar lifter, but I also put a cloth or towel underneath just for extra support in case for some reason my jar lifters don't have a good grip and the jar slips. The canner is done, so let's take everything out and let it sit on the counter to cool. And then once they are cooled and set, I will do a taste test and let you know my final thoughts. When you're opening a steam canner like this, make sure you open it away from your body, because all that steam coming out is going to be incredibly hot. All right, let me get my tongs and one of my little hot pads and carefully lift these out. I'm still hesitant to call this jelly. Right now it's still looking pretty runny, but I know that liquids can solidify a little bit as they cool. So hopefully that's the case with this jelly. If it doesn't turn out and it ends up being more like a syrup, I think I might make it again and just cook it for more time and go from there, but I'm not sure. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure my candy thermometer is inaccurate. I don't remember what I was making, but I was using it for something, and it might have actually been a different type of jelly a while ago, and it just didn't seem like it was accurate. It was saying a certain temperature, but the jelly wasn't the consistency I expected for that temperature. So I used my cheese making thermometer, which I use for yogurt, and it read a completely different temperature. It's entirely possible maybe the cheese thermometer was off, but I think it was the candy thermometer. So now I'm regretting not cooking it for a little bit longer, the jelly I mean, so that it gets past 225 Fahrenheit. But as I said, we'll let these cool and test them tomorrow. The jellies have been sitting for a while. It's the next day now, and they're not very jelly. They're definitely more of a syrup. So I've got 8 jars, and I think I'm going to dump out 6 of them back into a pot and just cook them down until it reduces a lot more, and then that should make a thicker product. I'm going to keep 2 just as they are, because I think that might be nice just to have a syrup. I was messaging a friend about the jelly because she's made jelly before, and I told her how it turned out, and she said it might be nice to have some just as the syrup to use in baking or whatever. So I think I'll take her advice and do that. But for now, I'm going to dump the rest out into this pot. I'm going to wash the jars and the lids in hot soapy water just to make sure they're nice and clean, and I will update you on how that's going. To redo this jelly, I'm just going to put it all in this pot and note where the level is now, and then just keep an eye on it to make sure it's reducing and not actually burning. So I've got it set to high for now, just so it starts to get a boil, but then I will turn it down to about medium or medium-low heat just to keep it at a consistent boil, but not a hard boil, if that makes sense. Hello again, friends. I have finished cooking my dandelion jelly again. It took a little bit longer just to get it nice and thickened. I didn't use my candy thermometer. I just relied on how the mixture felt while I was mixing it. And I know that's not very helpful information, but you can aim to have the mixture reduced by about half, and then that should be a good indicator that it has set. Of course, using a candy thermometer that is accurate is going to be your best bet, but since mine is not accurate, I didn't use it. So this is the finished jelly. As you can see, it is quite viscous. My husband tried some and said it tasted exactly like honey, which is kind of interesting. I thought it tasted a fair bit like citrus because I have citrus in here, but overall I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out. I didn't really share an exact recipe in this video, but I will write one up and post it on my blog, and I'll link that in the description of this video so you can check that out if you want. Hopefully by the time this video comes out, there are still dandelions that you can use to make this jelly, and if not, be sure to save this video for next spring when it is dandelion season. I definitely learned a lot while doing this whole process. It took a fair bit longer than I thought, but that's okay. That's kind of the trade-off when it comes to creating your own recipes. It takes a lot longer than just following one that already exists, but you get a nice product at the end and you can really customize it to how you like it. If you want a jelly that's more runny, you can cook it for less time, and if you want one that is incredibly thick, you can cook it for longer. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it interesting. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you like what you see on my channel, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications as well. Again, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.